Cloud.
Go ahead. Actually, I'm gonna, Betty, we had a, oh. Great. So hi, I'm Amy Tavern, and I teach here in the Jewelry and Metals program at CCA, and I'm really excited to be with all of you. I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. California College of the Arts is located in Yalemu, also known as San Francisco, on the unceded territories of Ramaytush Ohlone people who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. So welcome to the first installment of the spring 2024 BFA Senior Thesis Conversations. These conversations are our chance to highlight our seniors who are about to graduate at the end of the semester. And today we're celebrating 6 students who are graduating in May. Bertie Hostetler in Textiles, Cameron Barnes in Printmedia, Elliott Aiena in Textiles, Finn Weldon in Printmedia, Rami KD in Individualized Studies, and Taylor Shantz in Ceramics. Welcome, all of you. So the way this will work is each student will present for about 10 minutes. And then after each presentation, our guest respondent will have a 10-minute conversation with the student, providing feedback and asking questions. Please note that we won't have time to do a public Q&A, but we encourage all of you to add comments and affirmations for the students in the Zoom chat. We will save that chat at the end, and the student will get a copy of that in addition to a copy of the recording. And before we really get started, I would like to take a moment to welcome and introduce Julia Goodman, our guest respondent. Julia is here with me today. I don't know if you can see her, but there she is. Julia Goodman makes work at the intersection of papermaking, textiles, sculpture, and painting. She transforms bed sheets and t-shirts, fabrics that lie close to the body both day and night, into large and small wall works and suspended sculptures. Her work is in the permanent collections of the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington, D.C., and the DePaul Art Museum in Chicago, Illinois. She has completed residencies at J.B. Blunk Residency, Recology SF, and Creativity Explored. And Julia is currently teaching Introduction to Papermaking here at CCA. Hi, Julia, welcome. It's really nice to see you and have you here with me in the room. And thank you for joining us today and sharing your experience with all of our really amazing students. So let me tell you the order that we're going to go in so that all of you know. We're going to start with Bertie, and then we're going to go to Cameron, then Elliott, then Finn, then Rami, and then Taylor. And I'll call upon each of you, so you don't need to worry about queuing up until I say your name, okay? And let me know if you have questions as we go along. So we're gonna keep the presentations to 20 minutes each. I will give you a verbal warning at when you have 2 minutes remaining, and I apologize in advance. It will be an interruption and it might feel a little awkward, but I just want to be able to keep everyone on track. And then I will pass the conversation to Julia. And again, I will give you both a 2-minute warning. And let's try to stay within your 10-minute presentation time frame. If you go over, then we're going to deduct that time from your conversation, and you don't want to miss out on those valuable minutes. Okay. So Bertie, if you are ready, please share your screen and begin your presentation. And thank you and welcome.
Sorry, I got a new computer, so I have to go into system preferences and allow it to zoom.
Got it. Got it.
I'm I'm like,
Yeah,
ah,
there's always something. It's okay.
yes. Um, ooh, okay. Let's try that. Go.
Great.
But one thing after another. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to my presentation of my BFA conversation. I am a textiles major with a minor in writing and literature. And this is a photo of my parents, the first time that my dad got back from Air Force training in 2007. When I was 6, you can tell I chose the most flattering photo of myself. And my dad is a chaplain in the Air Force, which has led to one of the most interesting questions that everyone asks at every single presentation. Introduce yourself. Where are you from? And where am I from is a question I have been trying to answer for a really long time. Mostly because it takes a really long time to explain all of the places that I've lived. I'll try to speed run it for you. Arizona, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Japan, Texas, California, Colorado, Alabama, and a smattering of other places that I didn't live long enough to count. Um, because I've grown up in so many different places, counting one place as a home hasn't really resonated with me. I'm more inclined to refer to home as the people that I'm looking for. My artistic influences are also from a very, very close family relationship. My great aunts, grandmother, and my great grandmothers are all phenomenal artists. Marsha Burroughs on the top left is my great grandmother, and she was like most of them, just anything you can possibly do, she has done it. That was a self-portrait she'd done. This is a rug that she had made. My aunt did this felting, which I found really inspiring. I really love working with wool. And that's definitely something that's very integral to what I do is using natural materials. And wool is definitely my favorite. Um, and this is a colored pencil drawing that my grandmother did, of my great grandfather, her father. And so just I've been surrounded by amazing like female artists for as long as I can remember, which has been really like a blessing and a gift to me. And then my aunt also another one of the beautiful, beautiful things. Trains. I love trains. And so it's just a lot of like really, really fun things like that my family they're there for me and it's really fun. Um, this is a shawl that I made for my mother. It's called Getting to Know You. It's gone by several names, but this is the one I think that is gonna stick with it. As I was making it, it was supposed to be a surprise, and I just always tell my mom everything about like what I'm working on, and so I couldn't do that about this particular piece. So I read letters from my mother to the wool and the yarn as I was dyeing it and putting it all together. And I think it really just gave me the time to like process kind of a different relationship that I'm coming to have with my mom because like I'm in a different place and if I want to talk to her, she's not like right there. I have to like actively like seek out talking to my mom. And so it's a new like dynamic. And so like getting to know my mother as like a person that's not just like, Mom, where are you? Just it's been a really transformative experience for me. This is a rug that I made um, with all of the different houses that I've lived in embroidered into it. I've got like the path from my Colorado house. I've got the mud pits that my brothers dug in our like California side yard. I've got the swimming pool in our Alabama house. Just pieces of all of the different places that I've like grown up, um, put into one map. Because I always have this sensation going around corners that if I turn the road a certain way, I'll come out at like the Japanese supermarket. Like just the map in my head is so convoluted that I don't exactly know where everything is. So putting that all into one fictional map has been something that's like just exactly how I remember things. Like all these places are all living in one space. And I think it's been really, really a fun project. And that's all naturally dyed and it's all made out of like wool. Um, Again, the natural materials are really important to what I'm working on. I think just being able to touch something and know that it's real is just such a ephemeral feeling to me. This is a TC2 weaving. It's done on a loom that connects each thread individually, which is just kind of like a nerdy thing. You can do anything you want on it. Um, and I I have this story that my grandparents have separately told me, and none of the details match up. Absolutely. Like the only thing they can agree is that this quilt at one point did exist. All of everything else is completely different. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to combine their stories of how this quilt had existed, um, into one piece, which I think is kind of odd that I chose instead of making a quilt. I made a weaving of a quilt, which is kind of like uncertain of what it is, which I think is also lending to the idea of it being so it's such an uncertain story. Um, my grandpa says he was biking cross country and someone stole the quilt off his bike. My grandma says they were moving cross country and someone stole it off of the trailer. And so, like, the stories don't match. She says it was a wedding ring quilt. He says it was a fan quilt. But it's been so lost to time, the exact details, that I thought it would be fun to put in photographs from my grandpa of his bike trip. And they're so lost in the background that you can kind of see them. But it was more about the actual thing existing, but not as itself. Um, yeah. And yeah. So something that I plan on doing in the future is some more underwater basket weaving. I have really um I tried to make my first basket and I went and I did it in the ocean and it was freezing and insane and I loved I think every single second of it. Um Weaving has always been like such a like it's so soft, it's so bendy, it's so like you can crush it. And trying to do weaving as a more structured, concrete thing is insane, and I'm it's blowing my mind right now. So that's something that I want to do in the future more. But yeah.
Thank you. That was great. So I'm gonna just slide this over to Julia and get out of the way, and Julia can begin.
Sure. Hi, Birdie. Thank you. Congratulations on a beautiful body of work. Um, you know, it is, it's so interesting to see textiles work online. I wish I could be with all of your work in person and get us and like touch the fabrics um, and see the scales on the wall. But I really enjoyed how the stories behind each piece and how you walk me through. I did have some clarifying questions about some of the quilts or how you would present them. So, for example, the stolen bicycle quilt, was that the full image of the piece or was that like a detail?
That's the full image of the piece. Yes.
Okay, great.
So the edges, I think I have it. One second.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, I have it. It's not mounted yet, but it will be hung on a wall.
okay. That was my next question is how you imagined all the work,
Yeah.
the different
So
pieces.
the it wasn't the way that I had it photographed, I didn't want it like that. So I'm mounting it on a frame, and it'll be like it'll have dimension.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Can we go so I can see her? Okay. You know what I mean? Like see her.
Well,
Yeah, I can do
Oh,
this in a second. Pew.
oh, oh, there you are. Hi. Can you hold that up again?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. It's great to see it in like,
In scale
but
to a person. Yeah. I kind of wish this wasn't person, honestly.
no, it's okay, but it's great. And I'm just so in person, how clearly can you see the photograph, like the imagery from your grandfather's bike trip?
Like you do need to like if you stand back from it, you can see,
Okay.
but
And
it's
can you talk more about the edging on the piece?
yeah, I mean, it's a naturally dyed piece of fabric. This is logwood, onion, madder, and then there's some more green that's like red onion.
And you're such a storyteller and with your background in writing, and I'm curious if any of those natural dyes, the sources of those connect to any component of the
Not
trip, the stories, or maybe that's something in the
Yeah,
future.
something to think about. Yeah. I've definitely done natural dye in more of a thinking of what the dye means
Mhm.
aspect. I did a series about cochineal kerns and very like red dark dyes, just in the aspect of like death, and I that was definitely something that I had done. Um, so, but not particularly in this piece.
Okay. And then for the rug, the map, the Walk My Life,
Mhm.
I'm just curious installation wise, if you imagine that on the floor or hanging on a wall or how
It
you
would
imagine.
not be on a wall. I have installed it in several different ways. I laid it on the ground and then I surrounded it with blue tape that said "Take your shoes off." Um, and then I've installed it on a stair step
Hmm.
like situation of like pedestals, which is also
Mhm.
nice. I it I I'm still like 50-50 on whether I want more people to step on it,
Mhm.
purely because I have photographs of every single person who has stepped on it, and putting it in a gallery and not having someone taking pictures of everyone who steps on it kind of freaks me out. Um, so it's more of like the I know exactly who has actually like walked through my life kind of situation.
So the
Um,
documentation of
yeah,
the intention of the piece is really important to you.
yes.
It is that somewhere that you
Yes,
share the
I
piece?
have them just in like in my phone. So I mean I can show a
You
couple.
don't have to show me now, but if it was ever in a gallery and I knew that that was important to you, it could be something interesting to think about, like the piece and then on the floor and some sort of display of that documentation is interesting to me. Um, let me see. I'm fascinated of your recent love of underwater basket weaving.
I like I've been thinking about it for a really long time because I recently found out that it was mostly a derogatory term, which I had never taken it as.
Yeah.
Because when I was like small, like my dad would tell me like you can do anything you want. You can do even do underwater basket weaving. So it was more of like a exciting, fun new thing. And I recently found out that like someone was like, oh yeah, no, like that's like derogatory, like it's a stupid thing. And I was like, but it's not. It's fun and whimsical. And I was just really like interesting moment. And I was just like, well, I am gonna do it because I've been thinking about it for years and I was originally gonna do it in a swimming pool, but then in order to get it into a swimming pool in San Francisco, you gotta have a membership, and the ocean is free.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm curious, of all the possibilities, I'm thinking of you as a weaver working with the looms, the future of where the basket weaving might take you, and then also your minor in writing and literature, and just imagining how those three might possibly entangle going forward. And curious if to date there's been a writing component that went with any of your pieces, or
Yes, I wouldn't say every single one, but most of my weavings do have like poetry attached to them because I enjoy writing poetry. It's really unfortunate that the ones that I chose did not. Um, but yeah, I've definitely I've got a hidden slide on my slide deck that includes one. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I'm just happy to know that you're able to marry the two.
Yeah. So let's see if I can open this up. Let's see. Open, unhide slide. There we go. And then there we go. Let's share. Sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is a piece that I did titled Little Blue.
Mhm.
Um, Little Blue Christmas Mystery. Who are you, little girl? Are you old as me? Do you check your stocking anymore? Grandma always hangs it for you. Do you remember my birthday? Grandma always signs it for you. Do you play with your dolls? I've played with them. I know a graceful little girl. She's older than me. She hangs up my stocking. She remembers your birthday. She plays with your dolls. She sings. I wonder if you sound the same.
I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Thank you for unhiding that.
2 minutes.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your plans going forward, or what you imagine yourself doing inside or outside of the studio.
I really do want to continue doing a studio practice, but probably um more like for me as much as that. Something that I've really come to love is actually like conservation, which doesn't really show in this at all. I guess preservation of like stories and things, but I really would like to work in textile conservation, or in any sort of like museum setting. So that's something that I'm looking into.
I do have friends. I did textiles at CCA, and a dear friend of mine worked at the DeYoung in their textiles program.
I applied for their internship.
Oh, great. I've heard it's like a really great opportunity. Um, and then with the weaving, I know you have access to all of these amazing looms here at CCA. Do you have what tools or
I
equipment
I have
move
my
forward?
great grandmother's loom.
Well, that's very special.
Yes, for 2 years, I slowly and very gently hinted that I wanted it, and I got it.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, I wish you much time on your grandmother's loom, or
Thank you.
great grandmother, and I hope you get that internship.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really great. Let's move on to Cameron Barnes.
Hello.
You can get started when you're ready.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Cameron. I go by Cam in the classroom. I go by they, them pronouns, and I am in my final year as a print media major here at CCA. I currently reside in San Francisco getting my BFA. I was raised by my mom, as seen in the image. That's her and me as a child. I entered CCA in fall of 2019 as an animation major. Then I later switched to illustration. Then in fall 2020, I switched to printmaking, and that's where I found it to be my one true calling. During my time here at CCA, I read this book called Glitch Feminism by Legacy Russell. In it, it discusses how the internet was a safe space for queer people of color to exist freely, and how they are able to have their existence known in the real world through art, their art practice online. And through reading this book, I discovered that I have a tendency to hide behind a persona and the safety of the internet. Another inspiration of mine is Rosie Lee Tompkins, a Black quilter from the Richmond area. I found her recently, and when it comes to her quilts, I find them to be a beautiful collage of work, and kind of represents how I go about doing textiles, in a unstructured, unconventional way of my own. Ala Ebtekar is another Bay Area artist that inspires me. He focuses in cyanotypes and creating large configurations of like this one, 36 views of the moon, through small matrices. These are all book pages that he cyanotyped on. And in some of his other work, he has used ceramic tiles and even canvases to build off of each other and create larger images. So this is some of my own work. When I was first starting out in printmaking, I was really trying to hone my craft and really just focus on my marksmanship. And so this work is called The First Star, in which I was trying to create a multi-dimensional configuration where you can either visualize the hands giving away the star in the top image, or the hands receiving the star in the second. It didn't really matter to me whose hands it was or what the star was representing. For me, it was just the visuals that I really wanted to capture. And so I continued to build off of this with anonymous hands passing off this star. I didn't really care for the relationship. I just wanted a way to emphasize the exchange and the glow of energy between the hands. It doesn't really matter. There's no power dynamics or anything of the sorts. It's just the exchange that was important to me. However, I would later abandon the hands. I felt that they were becoming more of a crutch than a concept. It was something to cling to, and I felt more comfortable in my marksmanship, and I needed to move away with that and experiment. And so these are a bunch of monotypes to help me explore different printmaking techniques, and also to explore my identity. I was unable to see myself in my work, and so I was using the television, the sheet ghosts, and the colors to represent how I was feeling during that time and my relationship with the past, the present, and the future. And I was deeply attached to the ghost character that I created, and I continued to use them as a type of like subject to replace myself. The ghost is faceless, nameless, and blameless, a vessel for me to put myself in my work. The ghost is a persona, and the scene is an experience that I have had and many other people have had in their life. So I really wanted this to be a way for relatability. I really wanted other people to relate to my work. I felt like that was the way for people to understand me, was if they saw something that they have experienced and understood that I experienced that as well. And because of the relationship that I developed with this ghost, I created a life-sized piece to kind of commemorate that. I'm sorry for the image. I really wanted to capture the details, and I wasn't able to get a better picture because the same day that I took this, I submitted it to the Hamaguchi Print Award, and it was selected as the winner to be a part of the archive. This was submitted just last year, but I'm really happy with this piece, and I'm very appreciative that this was the piece that got chosen for me as the winner and for it to be a part of the exhibition and the archive. So my show isn't for some time. So what I'm working on right now is basically it's about a lot of the reflections I've been having this year and how I'm very happy with how far I've come with my journey in printmaking. And so my show is an ode to this chapter of my life and how it is soon coming to in my head, a satisfying ending. And so with this work, it's called Abundance. This is just a test that I did of a copper etching. And it's supposed to basically capture the overwhelming joy and feeling that I have through the abundance of stars surrounding the face, the single face. Through glitch feminism, I exemplify the internet personas I have as an ethereal being with a lot of control. This is a digital render of a screen print I'll be making for my show. A lot of control is had in the digital space.
2 minutes.
Thank you. You're basically showing a curated version of yourself to display to strangers on the internet who don't really know who you are. And so when you show the real version of yourself and the curated version of yourself, you kind of relinquish that control and reveal your true self, all the personas together. And that's what I would like for my show. And this is going to be like the main piece, another work in progress. This is a quilt top for a quilt in my show. This fabric will be cut and put back together. The changes are to represent who I have become, altered, rearranged, and reassembled. I am still a complete human being. I wasn't who I once was before, but I still am who I am today. Thank you so much for listening.
Wow, thank you. I mean, well, one, I want to say that we share a love of Rosie Lee Tompkins. I've seen her work a few times, but I remember when I saw it a few years ago, the first time at the Oakland Museum, one of her dark green velvet quilts, and I was so struck. And then the Berkeley Art Museum that solo show was so special. And so I'm excited to see the quilt that you make. And I love, I also really appreciate Ala Ektabar's work, and I can see how I had never thought about those two bodies of work, like his work as quilting, whether it be with ceramics or cyanotype, And then to see your monoprints, I could see how it's coming together through really, you've taken in work by two other artists, but really put it through your own filter to generate your own work. And that's always really exciting. I also thought it was really brave and self-reflective to recognize that you had found yourself in a very comfortable place with the hands and with the glowing star, and that you were able to abandon those and move on and shake things up and to continue to experiment both with imagery and printmaking methods.
Thank you.
That's exciting, and that will be a tool that will carry you far throughout your career. I think not everybody can shake it up like that when they hit a sweet spot. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very
much. I think it's really interesting how personal your work is, and yet you use anonymity to create an open space for people to connect, like with just the hands or with the ghost with the sheet over their head. I appreciate that you're always creating space or like a doorway for your audience to enter. I would love to see that monoprint in person one day, to see the scaling up of those monoprints. I don't know if I've ever quite seen it used that way, but
yeah, it's at Reiko in one of the flat files for the
okay, I'm there on Thursdays. Maybe I've seen you there actually, now that I think about it.
Probably.
Yeah, so I would love to get to see that in person. And it felt both rigorous and playful. And I say playful with like as the highest compliment. The colors, I felt like you maintained the form from piece to piece, their consistencies, but I could see how you let yourself play with the colors and mark making in each piece. And it really kept, I thought it made the piece feel a lot more energetic and alive than had it been rigid. So I'm curious, I'm very excited and curious to see like where the quilt takes you, and if you have future monoprints in mind.
Oh yeah. My relationship with monotyping is one of the wildest. Like in the beginning of my printmaking, I hated monotyping. I didn't like it. I didn't like soaking the paper. I was so afraid it would ruin it, and just getting one image out of one thing, it felt like a waste of energy. But while I was making those multiple monotypes, the whole it made me appreciate the process, and how just like mixing the colors was a day, picking the paper was another day, and actually printing was one whole day, like all of that. And it made it feel worth it because I was doing a lot of experimentation. And it just made me like realize that that's what monotyping is. Like sometimes in printmaking it's the end result that matters, but I feel like with monotyping it really is the journey until the end result. Like
yeah, no, I think you're right. And I also think working in multiples, even if at the end you choose one,
right.
two, but working in a series can kind of can take some of the preciousness out of the work, which can kind of freeze you up sometimes. And so I could see how you really found a way of working that works for you. And so that is really exciting. The quilt, can you talk more? Like, are you hoping to incorporate any print into the quilt, or speaking of Rosie Lee Tompkins, like any sort of objects, unconventional, like non-textile based objects? Or I'd just love to know more about your vision for that quilt.
Yeah. Originally I was going to print on the quilt, but the colors I chose are just so brilliant that I felt like if I were to print on top, it would cage the cage the effects. And
Mm.
so instead, it will be cut up, and then I'm not going to do anything unconventional. I'm still a beginner when it comes to quilt making, and so I'm just going to have some fabric editions of the stars
Mm.
in the similar design as the abundance piece. Um,
Mm.
and I will have those stitched on top.
Yeah, it's funny now that you mention it, I can see how that abundance piece actually looks like a quilt, like
Mhm.
tessellated and tiled together. So I could definitely see the relationship there. I mean, something to play with is you don't always have to print with black ink.
Yeah, it will be in color. I that was just
There might be some inks that don't. I love that thinking about like the ink caging the colors on the textiles and thinking what applications of color would let those colors stay free and
mhm.
light. Um, I will definitely check out that quilt as it evolves. You're graduating. I'm just curious, like in the future, what's coming up? Will you have access to any printmaking equipment? Um,
Um, I hope to build my own screen table. I have some screws, some clamps from over COVID while I was screen printing. And so I'd like to make my own portable one that I can just, move with me. And um, I'm looking into getting a book press.
oh, great.
Um, and then I'm interested in Penland School of Craft, and right, their fellowship and residencies are opening. Their applications are opening in May,
Oh, wonderful.
and so I'm hoping to apply for those. And then I don't remember exactly when the other thing opens, but I'm just interested in their residencies, all the residencies in general.
Hmm.
But the winter residency, it is for a shorter amount of time, only 2 weeks, but I would still just want to go. And if any of those fall through, I would be happy to just apply for a scholarship and do one of their extensive programs in printmaking.
That's great. I mean, I think the more different kind of studios you can visit and spend time in, and the it will help you build a vision for what you want in the future. But and then also locally, like Kala and the San Francisco Center for Books seem to be like great resources.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm just curious if you considered doing an internship or a job at any of the other printmaking studios in town.
Not right now. I feel like I need to kind of expand away from, because I know and understand that the Bay Area is very big in the printmaking scene. But I feel like I need to go somewhere else and kind of hone more of my skills and then return. Because yeah, with Crown Point and Kala and Center of the Book, um, although they do value community, I just don't feel like I'm at the place in my own skill to participate yet.
Well, I'm really excited to see the work you make in the future and where you land. So thank you for sharing your work with me.
Thank you
Really
so
appreciate
much.
Thanks, Cameron. Okay, next I'd like to welcome Elliott, Aiena, to share your screen. Hi.
Let me see if I can figure this out. Let's see. No. Where is it? Where are we? Can
Great.
we see that?
Mhm.
Whoops, that's the end. Why are we at the end? Ah, cool, thank you. My name is Elliott Aiena. I'm a queer and trans multidisciplinary artist, and I'm a major in the textiles department and a minor in writing and literature. Please enjoy a couple very professional shots of the artist at work while I do the introductory stuff. I grew up on Chumash land, what is presently known as the Central Coast of California, and currently reside in Yelamu, more commonly known as San Francisco, on unceded Ohlone land. As I said, I'm studying textiles and writing, but my main area of interest and study at CCA has been hand weaving. As I mentioned, I'm a self-identified weaver. One of the biggest artistic and frankly, like psychological influences I've gained while at CCA has been learning to weave. It's incredibly grounding as a physical practice requiring full body coordination and a complete understanding of and collaboration with the loom. Approaching art from within the grid structure and physical constraints of hand weaving is also simply where I've found I'm able to access the facets of my creativity that have led me to my thesis body of work. My visual work is heavily influenced by writing, both my own and others. To name a few significant pieces of literature, The Queer of Failure by Jack Halberstam, The Faggots and Their Friends Between Revolutions by Larry Mitchell, and A History of My Brief Body by Billy Ray Belcourt. Queer theory in general interests me and informs my work, as well as past and current political discourses surrounding queer, trans, and other oppressed peoples. The list of visual artists is truly too long to list, but I'm particularly drawn to and inspired by performance artists like Ron Athey, Marina Abramovich, Yoko Ono, and Chris Burden, and endurance performance in general. As I said a minute ago, writing like as a verb is a significant part of my art practice. I know these aren't about our minors as much as our majors, but I see very little actual divide or meaningful difference between my written and visual art practices. So I'd like to introduce my visual work with a poem in the spirit of Richard Serre's verb list. To be absent, to be disgusting, to be present, to bind, to bleed, to break down, to cut, to expel, to expose, to fundamentally change, to haunt, to hold, to imprint, to paint, to release, to relinquish, to repeat, to resist, to saturate, to scar, to sever, to shrink, to squeeze, to stretch, to suspend, to tie, to tighten, to unbind, to undo, to unravel, to warp, to weave, to wrap, to write, to rewrite, and to rewrite. So my MO for the last couple of years has heavily centered hand weaving with an emphasis on complex structure and warp painting. These are a few pieces in which I was experimenting with variations on a lace structure to weave text through entirely structural and textural means. I generally think about my weavings as skins or bodies, and stemming from my personal relationship with body modification. I like the concept of particular words or mantras being physically embedded in skin as a way of accessing ideas around body modding as an aspect of self-determination. The upper left piece uses my own writing. The full text says, "My body is a record of trauma and ecstasy." The piece below that says, "Extreme seductiveness is at the boundary of horror," which is a quote from Story of the Eye by George Bataille. And the final one on the right reads, "Theory mutilates, surgery liberates," which is taken from an archived transliberationist button. These are a couple of pieces from a series I've been calling trypanophobia, which means an extreme fear of needles. These utilize loom-controlled floats, which then off the loom I weave a secondary thread through to emulate a particular style of Japanese embroidery called kuguri sashi. The dark gray yarn in both pieces was immersion stained in black tattoo ink, and the light gray yarn in the piece on the left I used to clean my skin while tattooing myself, so it is also stained with some tattoo ink and trace amounts of blood. In addition to weaving, dye and print processes have been a significant part of my textile practice. Last semester, I was really interested in translating microscopic images of viscera and other tissues in dye-paste monotypes. The left image is a small monotype on cotton, and the right is 3 layers of monotypes and a single rotated and repeated screen print on various silk fabrics. The single screen print is also exemplary of the interest I have in creating images or patterns out of small and visually limited components. I hope it's starting to make sense how a lot of my other related art practices all kind of come back to the speed and sensibilities of weaving. These are a couple other weavings from the past year. These are when I was really working at the scale of my own body and approaching self-portraiture more directly. You may also be noticing a kind of theme in the Rorschach test-ish bilateral symmetry motifs. They're a way I've been translating the concept of a body into an abstracted or unrecognizable form that reflects the disunderstanding of transsexual bodies. Referencing the Rorschach test has also been my way of acknowledging the psychological conditions that contribute to others' aberrance of us and our bodies. The piece on the left is a painted warp, and the right was made using a traditional ECAT process, which I don't have time to get into, but that's spelled IKAT if you would like to understand what I went through. This is an image of a performance I did in a gallery a couple weeks ago, very literally bringing my body into the space, in which I spent an hour and a half tattooing my double mastectomy scars fully black. One of the reasons I continuously find myself working with bloody or visceral looking imagery is because it is explicitly confrontational and discomforting. Unfortunately, being visible and vocal as a trans and queer person is necessarily being confrontational and discomforting. But this performance was, among many other things, a commitment to my inhabiting of that state. I'm a faithful believer in the individual and collective transformative potential of fear and discomfort and repulsion through the confronting intimacy of performance and the familiar sentimentality of handwoven textiles. I want to carve open the time and space for people to sit with those feelings long enough to start to unpack them. This is the final piece in my thesis body of work, pun intended. Some love for the old textile studio in Oakland. While I do the wrapping up things. Hi mom, hi dad, hi grandpa, hi extended family. Shout out to our studio manager, Danny Lopez, for taking such good care of us. And to the textile faculty who have really made my time here. Our current chair, Josh Bott, Ann Wolf, Kat Karnicki, Angela Hennessy, our previous chair, Deborah Valoma, and Marina Contro, whose weaving class I took on Zoom my first semester here, and from which I have never looked back. Here's my contact, and that's me.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Elliott. I really appreciate that sharing your writing, your work, the work you've made in the textile studio, as well as the performance work. I have to say, like, I have a very physical practice myself where I make all the parts of my work by hand. But I usually don't put my own body out in space. I have not been that brave. And so I really I admire that you can do that. It's really incredible. I'm fascinated by this group of students that are both textiles and writing. And I think they're such complementary practices, the weaving of threads with the weaving of words and the construction of narrative and feeling. So I think that's really incredible. And I really appreciate you acknowledging the faculty and staff that supported you. I was lucky to have some of the same faculty members when I was in grad school. So I know that you're in good hands.
Very good hands.
I do find it amazing that you learned to weave online in your first semester. I don't know if I would have thought that was possible 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
It was weird.
I'm sure And it was weird, and to have an online, such an online experience, but then to have this come from it, such visceral work. I can feel the weight, like all of the decisions that go into your work, even though I'm seeing it online, I feel the weight of all of your selections, the fabric, the way the silk hangs lightly. I can feel the drape of the weavings. And I can feel the gravity of your body sitting on the ground for your performance. And so even though this is an online thing, your work is so expressive. So thank you for that. The piece, I have to say, I'm going to say it wrong, but was it
Trypanophobia. I think that's
that piece could have come, had I not seen it in this presentation, I would come across that piece, and there's something timeless about that piece that could have come from a number of places and a number of time periods. And to know how it came in this moment through your story is really beautiful, but I feel like you're tapping into a deep well that is bigger than you, and that's always a pretty powerful thing. So I hope one day I get to see that whole series, and I'd love to be in a room with an installation, like with you doing your performance, where I can read wall text of text that you've written and encounter some of your textiles suspended on the wall together. I can feel that would definitely be powerful.
okay.
I am curious about thinking about scale, the body scale. It seems critical for you. I'm curious, what is the smallest piece that you imagine yourself making, or like the largest piece that you, I know this is kind of a curve,
Yeah.
but just, I can feel like weight and scale seem so critical for you. And I'm just curious.
Yeah, I have always been interested in like the extraordinarily small and like the extraordinarily large, um, like larger than life, which I none of the work that I showed or that I like, I don't know, have done in this body of work are really, really like larger than life. But the trypanophobia pieces, I like actually have been thinking of as like blown up tiny microscopic images. Um, they kind of sprang from like my imagination of like just what happens on the microscopic scale, um, like physically in my body, um, where like where there's ink resting in between like layers of my skin. Um, and like I don't know, imagining what a way that I don't know that could look, I guess, on a teeny tiny scale, and blowing it up into something that is more, I don't know, well, that is readable. Um, but those are also the smallest things that I have in here.
I mean, I don't think scale and impact are directly related at all.
No,
I do think sometimes the small work is the entry into a larger, more vast space. But
yeah. I mean, I think kind of everything is small scale in that there are details that you need to get close to and like face right up in them, in order to like, I don't know, I feel like fully experience what's happening in any of these.
Yeah, I feel that especially with the I mean for the performance, and of course I wish I could be, but the layers of textiles attached to the wall, I can feel that I really need to be in space with them and watch how the pieces, I imagine the pieces move in space and the shifting kind of alignment as you go from one side of the piece to the next.
This digital format like kills me. Like showing this work in like this kind of
Although, I
format.
mean, I have to say that your work is so like expressive
Thank
and
you.
visceral across the format.
Thank
Um,
you. I just like I love when I had done this piece and was like looking at it on a wall. I took a whole bunch of video of it just
so
like
good.
kind of
It would be
billowing and
great to
moving.
see video documentation of that.
Yeah,
Love
yeah,
that.
I want to do something with it.
And I can imagine even further layering the layers of textiles as well as the performative component with some of the more 2D work. I'm asking all the students, but I'm curious what your plans are moving forward and in the studio and outside of the studio.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, after the last few years after going through undergrad, I hope a lot of it is out of the studio for a while.
That's
Um, I'm this is not a very exciting answer, but I'm wanting to go back to a bakery job. Um, I mean a whole nother facet of like I consider it part of my creative practice is like food and cooking and baking and engaging with food as like a social like community building thing,
Mhm.
which is just like I need a little bit of that right now before I think about the next art job, I think.
I mean, I do think part of like figuring out how to stay in the arts long term is balancing what your introverted and extroverted self needs, like isolated studio time versus like
Yeah,
more communal social experience.
definitely gonna keep weaving.
And do you have a loom or you have
I
off?
do.
Oh, that's
I have
incredible.
a smaller loom from the old studio
That's
that
incredible.
I've been dragging around the dormitories with me.
That was a smart move. Yeah. Well, and I look forward to seeing your work in the future.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Congratulations. And thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing it with me.
Thank
It's
you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Elliott. That was really great. Yeah. I'd like to welcome Finn Weldon.
Hello, let me just share my screen real quick.
Hi, Finn.
Hi. All right. Can you see this? Is everything? Oh, oopsie. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Finn Weldon. I am a print media major, graduating in just a few short weeks at this point. But I self-pronounce myself as a mixed media artist as I've traversed through many different majors and tend to push my printmaking skills into other mediums. A little bit about me. I currently live in Berkeley, but I grew up in San Anselmo, California, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. From an early age, my father, a painter, took notice of my creativity and encouraged me to explore a wide variety of artists and practices. He would often ask me to help him out in the studio, setting up a gallery show or working.
Finn,
Yes.
can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Your presentation is still loading.
Oh, oops. Hold on.
We still can't see your images.
Oopsie, hold on. Let me, oh, hold on. Can it please work? Oh no. Hold on, let me stop and let me retry that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, Perfect. Oh, why does it? Okay, it keeps doing that when I try to enlarge it. Do you guys mind if I keep it at a small screen?
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Okay, okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Sorry for the technical errors.
It's not a problem.
Yeah, not at all.
All right. So yes, as I was saying, my father strongly encouraged me and had me work with him in the studio, setting up gallery shows and working on a variety of group shows with all of his artist friends, helping them and learning from them as I go. My interests often stem from this encouragement. He encouraged me to fall in love with music, film, and television. I found myself intrigued by bold colors, geometric shapes, and textiles from a young age. My biggest motivations usually come from my friends and family, as well as my natural desire to forge my own ideal world and path in life. Some of my earliest inspirations were MC Escher's tessellated patterns. This piece, Birdfish from 1938, was one of the first pieces my dad showed me when I was about 5 years old. I instantly was intrigued by the simplicity yet the complexity of the work. The other piece on the right is a quilt that I found on the internet. It is reminiscent of the quilts my Celtic aunt made growing up and often gifted me as a child. I come from a Celtic background and I've always been intrigued by the use of line and shape in those motifs. More currently, I'm looking at Maravera Textiles. They're a textile firm operating out of the UK. They specialize in naturally dyed, hand-printed patterned cloths in a variety of different shapes and sizes, wall hangings and whatnot. They strive for eco-friendly, they strive for eco-friendly hand-printed textiles. The piece you see in front of you is called Veranda. It's a block printed pattern on a heavy Irish linen, something I also found connected to my heritage as well. I would also like to take a look at Deruda pottery. This was something I grew up with in my household and more recently rediscovered it as an interest in my practice of pattern design. Deruda's ability to create ornate, individually handcrafted and printed earthenware has served as a current source of inspiration towards my practice. A body of work that I'm very proud of and that continues to keep popping back up was a series I did as an advanced ceramicist in my high school, and I used it for my portfolio to enter into CCA. It was where I fell in love with surface texture and creating pattern and shape out of objects like clay. These were all built by slab building. I took multiple layers of different colored clay, layered them out, rolled them super thin, continually refolded, and then formed the shape in the end. They are cups, vases, and a candelabra. As I said previously in the introductory, I pivot myself as a multidisciplinary artist. And so I got tired of making patterns for a little while, and I started kind of working in with comics, something that is just a personal kind of catharsis for me outside of my art practice. And I was trying to explore trauma and familial bonds between brothers. I made this small comic strip reminiscent of Sunday Times comics, like Garfield or Filbert or Calvin and Hobbes. I tried to create my own characters, but a common question I kept getting asked towards me was, how can this relate to your pattern work? Because that was something that was coming back up at this time. So I did try to digitally render the characters as a repeat pattern. I did print it on a bed sheet, but it was kind of a in-progress piece that I'm not really proud of. So I decided to show the digital version instead. The piece on the left is called Did Dad Show Up Today? And the piece on the right is called Brothers, but they are one and the same, basically. So For my thesis show, my goal is to, I've been working to create an interior design installation that will consist of various objects and surfaces adorned with a continuous repeat pattern that will be the same on every surface, but the colors and material will vary from piece to piece. And in front of you, you'll see a rough sketch of how I've envisioned the show to be laid out, as well as some of the sample pieces I've made so far to get an idea of the structure and form of the shapes I'm working with. The patterns will be made from a single linoleum block that will tessellate and be printed by hand. The forms are inspired by MC Escher and Italian tile design. I tend to place an emphasis on simple shapes that become more complex once they're printed and connected. This slide is showing various beginning sketches and tests of tessellations done in my sketchbook. These were meant to give me an idea of what I did and didn't like and end up choosing a pattern to work with for the show. Currently, this is where my progress is right now. I have a few more that are halfway through completion that I wasn't able to get photos of, but these are two of the finished fabrics. I opted for bold and bright colors whilst trying to stay monochromatic with each piece. The shifts in color really allowed for some unique results, especially when the patterns are viewed from different angles and the light refracts on them. So for graduation and beyond, I plan to first travel for a while, find a variety of work around the world, get some life experience. I felt like I've been in sort of a bubble my whole life of growing up in the Bay Area and never leaving the Bay Area. So that would be the next step. But ultimately, in the future, the long-term goal is to have my own design firm, small independent business, formed with a collective of small artists, nothing and all done by hand. I don't want to have any automation in my practice. I would like to work with patterns printed on a variety of surface and interior specific products. This can be wallpaper, pillows, blankets, bedding, and clothing, just to name a few. I'd also, along the way, like to work for, I'd like to work with Paul Maloney Press in Portland, Oregon. I have looked into Claw since I live in Berkeley. I've also really been interested in Mary Mecco. It's a design house working with printed textiles. Oh, yep, okay. And I also, as more recently, since I've been interested in the Maravera textiles and their ability to do hand printing with natural dyes, that is something that's been really intriguing, and I would love to work with them as well. Most importantly, I want to take the time to build upon the foundation and skills I've learned while working on my show. And I hope that my next project will be a sort of personal project for myself, a redecoration of my living space in my home with homemade decor. If you would like to contact me, you can email me at both finweldon@cca.edu or finweldon@gmail.com, as my CCA email will probably disappear in a few years. You can find me on Instagram at fin.cca. I am working currently to make it more current work. I do not have a website yet, but I'm hoping to have one by graduation, and I will put it on my show cards when you come to see me. Lastly, I would like to thank all of you for tuning in and giving me the time to share. I would especially like to thank my family and friends for their never-ending support, as well as all the teachers who have pushed me to be better. And a special thanks to Amy, who's been especially helpful to me this semester and been in my corner at all stages. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Finn. That was great. Good job.
Yeah, thank you, Finn. Yeah.
Let me know if you need me to reshare. I just figured it'd be easier to talk face to face like this.
It's actually a treat. Thank you. I think it's pretty amazing that you remember the first piece of artwork that you saw when you were 5, the MC Escher print, and then how that has carried over even into your final project here at CCA. That's pretty incredible. I don't know if I remember the first piece of artwork I saw. Yeah.
It's weird how my memory works. I remember the weird minute details from years ago, but I can't remember what happened 3 weeks ago. Like, it's just, I have great long-term, but horrible short-term.
Well, you work with what you got.
Exactly, exactly.
I wanted to thank you for showing me pictures of your sketchbook and process. It's a real treat for me in a presentation like this to really see inside somebody's like sketchbook and studio. And in fact, I was looking through an artist's book the other day, a painter named Susan Frecone. And at the end of the book, they have a whole series of shots from her sketchbooks and her making things and her materials. And it's just a treat for me. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And you definitely have a vision for the future.
Yes.
Where you want to go. So that's really exciting. I was definitely thinking of Mary Mecco when you were talking, and I had not heard of Mara Vera Textiles. So thank you for introducing them to me. A few other places that come to mind. If you ever find yourself in Portugal, there's a tile museum that I think would be up your alley in Lisbon, Portugal. And they might have
what's it called?
It's called the Tile Museum. It's
the Tile Museum. Okay.
About the history of tiles, but there's a lot of tessellating tiles and simple patterns that add up. And I think it is a parallel vocabulary to where you're working. And one artist and one other maker of like collaborative group. I don't know if you've heard of Block Shop in Los Angeles. It's a textile group. It's actually run by sisters in Los Angeles, and they work with some block shop printers in India.
Okay.
And they just opened they have a big online presence, but they just opened their first brick and mortar store in Los Angeles. And they host gatherings and craft events. And if you find yourself down there, it might be something of interest to you. And I know they're on Instagram. And another artist that came to mind was Andrea Zattel. She might have already been brought up to you.
No, actually, that's one name I have not heard before in many critiques.
Okay, well, she also kind of designed her interior, in very small spaces, almost like pods, and then into bigger, kind of almost like compounds in Joshua Tree, and would also make her she was making uniforms, she'd make textiles, making rugs, ceramics. She might be somebody that you're interested in as well.
Yeah, that sounds right up my alley.
And I know that there are opportunities to visit in different capacities.
Yeah.
Either like an apprenticeship maybe, or I haven't looked in a long time. So I don't know what they offer, but if you look her up, let me see. I also appreciated the older ceramics that you showed. It was nice to see the full trajectory for you. And I'm curious if ceramics will circle back into your practice.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I've been really intrigued trying to get back into ceramics lately. I've seen some really interesting processes with screen printing slip onto a leather hard piece and kind of working with surface and texture that way. I also would love to take my skills of block printing and like carve clay again. I feel like that would be a really interesting process. But obviously I'd have to get access to a kiln or find a used one that I could buy. That one might be a little bit more tricky.
There's also some great community studios, including in Berkeley. There's one off of 4th Street, like the Potter's Studio, I think is what it's called.
Oh yeah, I've driven past the Potter.
Yeah. And I know a number of artists who started experimenting with ceramics through that communal studio. So it could be a place to check out.
Yeah.
When you said you wanted no automation in your practice, I thought that was a really bold and interesting statement. to say. Yeah, Nathan's pointing out that there's lots of used kilns online too. I'm sure he knows a lot more resources for you than myself, but.
He's my interdisciplinary critique.
Okay, good.
We've begun to talk about it, but I obviously would need to do more research, but we'll talk further on that.
But the no automation in practice, that's such an interesting statement to make.
Yeah, I think that comes from because I changed majors about 3 times since I was here. I did a small stint as fashion design, a major stint as graphic design, and then printmaking with an emphasis on textiles now. I feel like my time in graphic design, although working with patterns, really pushed me away from working digitally or automated and anything that was quick. I like to work with my hands. Transversing into a process where I work with my hands, it makes me want to continue doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was very, I would give yourself the freedom though, that if there might come a time in your life where you have to work at a different speed and maybe some shortcut is allowable, you know, but I appreciate the statement. And I think it's, especially after the last 4 years and coming out of a education that was so much more digital than mine, I can see how like this craving for the handmade is an antidote for the, I see it. Yeah. And then while you're down in LA visiting, I hope you'll go to Block Shop and then also the Gamble and Gamble house, which I believe it was 2 brothers, but maybe I'm wrong. But it's in Pasadena, but they designed everything in the house. And it's an old craftsman home. But it might be of interest to you.
I'd love to go back down there. I loved touring Art Center down there years ago. And that's where I kind of also fell in love with surface design. So it'd be interesting to go back down there again.
Yeah. It's exciting. Just imagine even I think just starting in your own home with redesigning your living room, I think is a really beautiful project. And is this the home that you share with your family or your own? Or...
It's an apartment, but I figured if I can at least add decoration, nothing that's permanent, it will kind of make it my own space. I share it with my girlfriend and my sister in Berkeley. It's a small space, but it's I really want to make it ours, basically.
Yeah, and I think there's a long history of like artist-built homes in the Bay Area and all over the world. But I think about like J.B. Blanc comes to mind. And there's a Blanc space up in, you can visit like a gallery space, 500 Cap Street with David Ireland's space.
David Ireland. You?
And artists who've really envisioned their own interiors. And then just a long history of house galleries and apartment galleries. So I think starting with the space, you know, so many people get caught up on not knowing what, you know, it can slow them down, not knowing where their work will go after school. And so I think starting with your interior space that you have easy access to, I hope it really opens the floodgates for you creatively when school gets out. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate all your feedback.
Yeah, and thank you. Thanks for sharing your work.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Finn.
Thank you, Amy.
Sorry. Next, I'd like to welcome Rami KD to begin their presentation.
Hello. Let me get my thing set up. All right. All right. Everybody can see my screen?
There it is. Great.
Cool. All right. Hello. I'm Rami KT. I will be graduating also in a few weeks. I'm an individualized major, and I also have minors in computational practice as well as social practice. And wrong one. Just a little bit about me. I was born in SF. I was raised in Oakland. And family and community have probably been some of my biggest influences. Here's a picture of my mom and my grandparents at my graduation in downtown Oakland. Um, and I think that their influence in art making, artistic, anything, as well as my grandfather's interest in family history, specifically Assyrian history relating to our family, has been pretty influential. And I'm probably going to be continuing his practice of cataloging and archiving and researching things. And some other influences, I really love illustration and textiles, from comics, from looking at concept art, for sci-fi things like Star Wars, Star Trek, Mandalorian, and plenty of other types of media, as well as textiles that I see all around my grandparents' house, around my house, like rugs that we had around. Those colors, those patterns have influenced me greatly. Um, and then the collection of archival images that my grandfather has collected from our entire extended family and beyond. This is a picture of his grandmother back in Iran, from a long time ago. And then for some of my other influences, specifically for what I've been working on for the last year or so, is a wide range of things. Um, Firstly, I got into electronic textiles from people like Ebru Kavrak, who has been experimenting with using conductive fiber, conductive yarn to make things like a knitted radio, where if you know a little bit about like electronics, um, the the pattern would act as like resistors. Um, Instead of having like physical like metal ones that you usually use when you make like circuitry in electronics. And this could be used for a person to wear. And one of the things that they focus on is how you can, what it would be like for technology like this, for you to be able to like weave technology, embroider technology, bring those techniques back to like something that is often like overlooked and disregarded, such as craft items like these. In addition, some other things that are really have been really influential to me has been concept art, specifically Star Wars. Ralph McQuarrie has been a really big influence as like an illustrator, just like his beautiful drawings that created this entire universe. I love how you can create worlds and people can try to make things in real life based on those things that you just draw. That's insane to me and I love it. As well as just like the beautiful illustration and the character design and storytelling within there. The third thing that has been pretty influential on me actually was Ryan Coogler's Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever. The way that he was able to tell like Afrofuturist stories, taken from the comics, of course, as well as just like bringing in a retelling of narratives, specifically of how uh, different narratives of how oppressed people can uh, have their like own stories or like retelling of histories. That was a little confusing. It'll make sense in just a second. Um, as well as just like how technology can be based culturally instead of in a sterile way. That'll make more sense a little bit later. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is is a body of work I've done within this last semester too. Is a series of 10 illustrations, and I called it Beta de Chokwe, which is translated as Home in the Stars from Assyrian. And I wanted to figure out how I wanted to think about an alternate history in which the Assyrian diaspora, there was an Assyrian diaspora in space, in the stars, thinking about how uh, there how in, without the persecution, without facing genocide, without the like just general oppression that exists on this earth, how we could have a lot of the stuff that was lost or have just in general, how technology could develop, how clothing that was lost could develop. How would we look like? What would we look like without all of this persecution, the assimilation that happens when we move to places like the United States to escape this persecution? Um, and so this is two drawings from it. I'm showing only a couple just for the sake of time. But this is the ship I designed. I wish I could zoom in on here, but if you want to look at it a little closer, I can send you a link. Um, and just like, how can I use weaving patterns to influence ship design? This also in general, that area, like from the Caucasus and from the Levant, like textiles, as well as just like our flag is all incorporated into that design. It says my internet connection is unstable, so let me know if I cut out. And then this is a picture of my sister holding a picture of that was referenced in the beginning of the slides of my grandpa's grandmother. Um, and I was able to like kind of based on this photo and some other photos, I was able to see of Assyrians in the area that my family is from. I could re kind of like colorize and redesign this type of clothing because no one wears this type of clothing anymore. Everyone in that area of like Urmia, like northwestern Iran, there's not a whole lot of Syrians left there. And so this type of clothing doesn't exist. So I can recreate this in a new space. This is her own room with like electronic textiles glowing in the window. And how can I make like a story and just like think about what could have been? And these are some other ones that I really loved out of that series. This is my grandfather's mother. It's actually a picture of her in San Francisco in the 40s. So I used that reference image to illustrate her and make some jewelry, like use inspiration from other jackets I've seen embroidered from all these archival photos I've been looking at to recreate that here. As well as just like have a background of just like you live in the high life over here. You like, how could that have been? Um, and so I really enjoyed that. As I also gave a print to my grandfather, and he like really loved it, and I think that connection was really special. And the final one I'm going to show from the series is called Spinning Electric Yarn. Part of my world building to this, oh, gotcha. Part of my world building to make this is thinking about what I could have as like the weaving and electronics part, how it could be incorporated. And I tried to do that in real life as well. So this is something I've been working on for a little over a year, making tapestry based, weaving actually conductive yarn that I spun with wool as well as steel fiber to make this like conductive tapestry. And it would connect and I could use it as if you know like a MIDI keyboard, like electronic keyboard or a drum pad, I can program whatever I want to connect to that. People touch the tan areas right here. I'm not sure if my mouse can see. And then they would be able to like trigger a sound or music. I also like built the loom as well so I could transport it easily. And I also dyed it with pomegranate and cochineal, all the yarn. And I think the orange one actually might be Kool-Aid. So we'll see how that holds up long term. But yeah. And then here's some process pictures of showing this tan area as the resistance, how easily electricity can pass through it. And just like how I was weaving tapestry. And then here is a short video. If it loads, I'll play it.
I do definitely think at first it was saying Bob.
That was actually pretty uh not the best video, but I am continuing to work on it and code it. So when you press those different things, it will trigger different sounds or songs. And then the other things I want to do is I want to continue to expand both of these stories. I want to continue making that weaving. I've been trying to code it for a long time. It's giving me a lot of frustration, but I'm really excited to finish it. In addition, for like more career goals, I want to get into book publishing, as well as creating educational workshops for weaving, natural dyeing, and electronic textiles. And just as a way to get people involved and as in love with textiles as I am, more in my community. I'd never heard of much weaving before when I came here, and I would really like it to be as just as accessible as like picking up a pencil would be, for people to like understand. And using historical, cultural, or scientific context, I could teach natural dyeing or weaving in schools as well, through like the chemistry process within dyeing, or just like the historical process, the historical context with like weaving and patterns. And for electronic textiles, obviously like the STEM education that could go with creating circuitry. So those are things I'm really excited about. Of course, I'm also interested in just finding any.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to continue all the things that I've been talking about.
I'm sorry, Rami, at the very end, you cut out. You said you're interested in finding any.
And I was just saying I'm going to try to find any type of work I can in general. Not much interesting about that, but the reality. Um, and then here is my contact information. If you are interested in any of the things I was talking about, particularly like electronic textiles, I have a lot of resources I've been compiling, and I can send them to you if you want. I also have documented the process of me spinning, dyeing, and weaving and doing electronics for the rug, and that is on my website on this QR code. And this is my Instagram, which has some behind the scenes, and my email as well. But yeah.
Thank you so much. That it's there's like a theme of generosity in your work and wanting to teach or to share. I mean, it clearly you spent years figuring out how to do this, and then you're wanting to teach and share. One place that came to mind, you were talking about jobs or places to think about is I don't know if you've been to the Exploratorium lately, but that seems there's some special people there, and it seems like one of those places where art and science overlap pretty effortlessly. I think the connection. Sorry.
I'm gonna turn my camera off real quick. Usually that helps.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay.
Sorry, could you repeat what you said? Am I back?
Oh, I was just saying the Exploratorium seems like a place for you to visit. I don't know, you might have already been there. Have you been there recently?
I have not been there in the last like 15 years, probably.
I think
So
it would
maybe
be amazing to go there as an adult. And they have that open maker space, that tinkering space, and they have a lot of visiting artists. I think after I graduated, I remember I taught a paper making workshop there years ago, and that was really fun. It got my toe dipped into teaching workshops and stuff in the Bay Area. And I have a friend who's an astronomer who works with a lot of weavers, and I'd be happy to introduce you. I'm really moved by the connection with your grandfather and his archive. The way you're honoring it, and then also it just pulling it into the future with this like futuristic sci-fi. I'm just curious more about the conversation you all are having. I mean, it's tender and radical.
Yeah. I mean, I call my grandpa every Sunday. And I think at this point, I'm probably the one that knows most of the family history more than anybody else. Because and so just like, I'm definitely like archiving that in a lot of ways. He has been trying to create like a little book about everything. And I'm trying to like bring that into different visible forms because a lot of Assyrians don't have a whole lot of media, And I think I want to try to bring some of that so other people can relate, or so we can have some type of thing to look at together as a community.
And I
I
can
don't
see
know.
why, like with the digital paintings, that makes sense because you could share it so in multiple, and it could be spread far and wide. But I love your relationship to the future and space as like a place where people can thrive and exist and not have to assimilate. And it's really a beautiful vision. And I love, so much of outer space feel, I know the connection, Deborah wrote hand spinning on a spaceship. But the idea of like how textiles are informing outer space or the shape of it's really beautiful. So thank you. An artist collaboration that I thought of that might be interesting for you is Melissa Potter makes handmade paper in Chicago, and she teamed up with Paul Cantonese, who is works a lot more with the computational side, and they made a series of handmade paper with like LED light shaped inside of it based on, I'm trying to, based on, it's Touchetti rugs, but it's a really interesting collaboration that feels sort of in parallel to the last project that you showed with the loom, and just so incredible, all the problem solving and innovation that you had to do to see that project through, like building your own loom, making it portable. It's really commendable. And I hope I get to see it in person. Can you talk more about the programming aspect of that? Like what sounds it'll make, or maybe I missed that.
Yeah. Right now, I'm coding it using an Arduino, which is like a little microcontroller. It's about like this big. And I'm using capacitive touch, which actually it's the same thing that your phone uses to know where your finger is on the screen. The same reason that like you can't touch it with a glove on, you can't feel it. Like anything conductive that you touch to it'll know and it'll trigger. So the same thing happens with this. The same thing happens in this textile as well. And then for the sounds that I'm going to make, right now I had to replace the type of controller I was using, so I had to recode a lot of things. Um, it's been confusing, so I'm not quite sure which direction I'm gonna go in. Most likely, ideally, I would like to be able to use it as a MIDI keyboard and hook it up to Ableton, which is like a digital audio workspace. It's kind of like a different version of, it's like a more advanced version of like GarageBand. Um, and so I can have different songs in there and people could click on it and different ones would play. Um, if that doesn't work, I can also use it to make um, a if you ever been to a concert, the people who play that show all the visuals in the background as the person is singing, they also use a MIDI keyboard to do that. And so I can do the same thing where I show visuals instead and hook it up in the same way. It just depends if I can get these different programs to recognize this little thing I programmed as a real device, which has been frustrating.
Well, don't give up.
But
I have complete faith that you can do this. I mean, it clearly, if you put your mind to something, you can do it. And then I mean, this is just a sidebar, but two things. Your digital paintings are gorgeous. The light that you like, this idea of this illuminated thread, and then I think it was in Georgia's with Rachel in her room. It was a really beautiful painting, the translucency in the veil, the lighting, the lit textiles in the background, seeing your grandfather's picture so clearly referenced in there. But just like a side note idea, you probably have already done it, but at some point, if you can, you might want to record a conversation, one of your Sunday conversations with your grandfather and have his voice recorded, since you do work with sound. I don't know if you'll ever use it, but it might be something, it might be a treasure whether you use it or not. But one of the, this concept, I made a piece called 200-year present, and it's, you know, the 7 generations, like thinking 3 generations back and 3 generations forward. And I can really see that you have a big heart for the future, past and present, all at once. And that gives me hope. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Rami. Well done. And lastly, I would like to welcome Taylor Shantz to begin your presentation.
Okay, hello.
Hi, Taylor.
Just one second. Okay, can you guys see it?
Yes.
Great, okay. I'm Taylor Shantz. I'm a ceramics major, and I studied product design and sustainability for 3 years before transferring to CCA's ceramics program. And my first introduction to clay was when I was around 12, and since then it's just been an outlet for self-expression and a source of peace. And my emphasis now is on sculpture and furniture and homewares. And I take a lot of inspiration from the sea and biodiversity and natural elements in Northern California. And I also love gardening, poetry, cooking, and my senior chihuahua named Paolo, who is on view. The first inspiration I wanted to mention is The Senses Design Beyond Vision by Ellen Lupton. It's this really gorgeous guide on how to engage the senses in a really like radical and inclusive way. And my industrial design background has influenced the way I view ceramics as really like a tool for connection and creating a space for vulnerability and conversation. And so this guide has really helped me. This piece, The Mountain, I was really thinking about connection or human connection as a radical practice, and seeing, you know, being forced to interact with each other on a different level and engage a space in sort of a curious and kind of awkward way. And then another inspiration, Sudden as a Massacre by Kate Gilmore, all about clay and the body and performance and this sort of destruction or just sort of absurdity, and that affects the viewer and the performer, that inspired this next piece, Home, which was this is a video still where I asked my peers to throw rocks at an unfired vessel with little to no context. And I was just really thinking about societal norms that go unquestioned, that are destructive. And then just a quick look at what that looked like. And another inspiration, Amanda Gentry's Murmuration. There were these terracotta pods where you're asked to reconnect with yourself through listening to the vibrations of your own voice. And it's this kind of beautiful individual yet collective experience. This was inspired by a tree branch that I found that had fallen at the park, that when I brought home sprouted this sort of like last breath of leaves, and I wanted to create an altar for it, and was researching the archetype of the tree of life, and I wanted to create a body that felt like maternal and sort of genderless ancestor, and had this sound offering of bells and this sort of belly for water. And then also asked my peers to write some words of gratitude onto the piece before firing it. Another inspiration, J.B. Blanc, who was mentioned earlier. I'm so inspired by his use of local and found materials and keeping in the spirit of natural objects and just using old techniques and craft to really elevate everyday objects into art pieces. And this inspired this dining table where I was really interested in traditional crafts and traditionally turned legs with this twist of beads that I turned on the lathe that are meant to be spun and played with during dinner. And just some sketches on how I was thinking about that, going about that. Resounding Hearts. These were 30 porcelain bells that all created a different note and a different sound, and each person who interacted with it got to sort of create their own sound piece. And I really just wanted to inspire some introspection and play and a meditation on sound. Oh. Sorry. And then resonance balloon, which is some more recent stuff. I was thinking about the history of ceramics and its use for containing water and food being its reasons for coming into existence, and thinking about in a more contemporary sense how to push the material into a form that it doesn't necessarily want to be, which would be furniture. And have this sort of duality of the past and the future and into something utilitarian that can still contain water if it really wanted to. And it also has this other function that the trapped air in the hollow tubes creates this ceramic resonance that can be experienced when you're sitting and you put your ear to the tube. And again, sort of just engaging the body in sort of awkward ways where you're creating this connection point. And then that body of work just continued and explored a little bit more with wall pieces. I was also researching anthropomorphism a lot and just thinking about how humans project a lot of their feelings of the body onto inanimate objects. And then just some more in-process stuff I'm working on now, thinking about how sound can travel through vessels and just playing with also just more historical forms. And in the future, I'd also just like to play around more. I haven't mentioned much about my poetry practice, but how to include more of my poetry practice into my ceramics art practice and see if I can find some sort of interaction point with that. And yeah, some sort of poetic ceramic resonance. I don't know. And yeah, another thing for the future, I'd just like to find a place to set up shop to continue working, find a studio, maybe find a job in the field, but mostly just, I guess, try and enjoy my life outside of school. Thanks. Special thanks to my mom.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Taylor. I'm going to look up Design Beyond Vision. Thank you. I've never heard of that book. Sounds really, really interesting. And I was like so struck that you let other people write on your work before firing it.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous about it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, there were things written where I was like, oh, okay. I don't love that, but
Would you do it again?
Huh?
Well, I mean, I saw you want, I know you want to incorporate your own poetry in the future, but would you let people write? I mean, I think that was an amazing experiment. Would you do it again? Or
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It felt really good. Yeah.
the dinner table with the legs, with the like, I was so struck that it felt, I mean, it was aesthetically beautiful. It felt like a toy, you know, the playfulness of it. And then also just thinking about all of when you're at a dinner party, having to talk to somebody that you really don't want to talk, and this, like the comfort that would be, and being able to like endlessly spin these bracelet, like wooden bracelets. There could be a time and a place for that table. The world might need a table.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have heard a little bit more the sounds that the bells made.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I have to say the shadows were also, I know you described it as like a soundscape, but the shadows from that piece were stunning.
Mm-hmm.
They're really beautiful. Somebody who used to live in the Bay Area, who lives in LA now, who's really been researching the history of bells and bell making is Davina Semo.
Oh, okay.
I know she's like at a foundry in Virginia right now that works with really traditional methods. She might be somebody interesting to talk to. Somebody older, somebody who I met through my time at CCA. I just saw him do an artist talk who came to mind with your work, Alan Wexler.
Oh, I don't know the name. Yeah.
Before, there's like poetry and interaction. It's both architecture, ceramics, design. But he's somebody that might be of interest to you as well. The resonance balloon piece, that chair, it had so much life to it. I was almost waiting for it to like walk or move. And the idea of it holding water was really beautiful. And then even imagining somebody sitting in it, and if there was like flower, like a vase or
something like, coming out of it. Yeah.
And life coming out of it. So a person sitting in it, but they're like, hanging over them. Really, and just even conflating like the design, architecture, and vessel all together. The holder of plant, the holder of body. There's something really beautiful there, and I'd love to see like more of those chairs in the space. Let's see what this question of do we fit inside each other for a title is really beautiful, and the pieces on the wall as well. It's just like there's a lot of poetry to that question. I'm curious to see where that leads you. Yeah, I would really like to see your work in person. I'd love to feel what it feels like. Have people actually sat in that chair, or when people are interacting with do we fit inside each other? I could see Donald like getting really close, but do you let people touch the work?
Yeah, it's in my studio. It's where people come and sit when they come visit me in the studio.
Oh, really? That's
yeah.
I mean, that change, I would imagine that changes the whole experience of all the work to feel it.
Being used. Yeah.
That's and so, yeah, tell me more for the future. I mean, I know you talked a little bit about, but where do you see these going? Have you been up to the Blanc space yet?
Actually, no, I haven't. I've been to the gallery space, but I haven't seen.
Oh, yeah, the gallery space is what I meant. Like, where
but I'm not sure if his home is available to see.
I have to say, after graduate school, I got really lucky and got to live in his house for 2 months.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that must have been really special.
It was special, and I knew it was special, and now I know even more how special it was. But yeah, and I hope you have a chance to see more of that work and interact with more of that work in the future. Like the cups, also the range of scale of your work really reminded me of JB, like small cups that you could hold, or even like designed. One of my favorite things about that house is actually the pulls for the light switches. He designed all of those, or carved all of those. So everything, it's such a touch experience,
Yeah.
his relationship with ceramics as well.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking a lot about what kind of job I'd like, or I'd like to find something that's sort of in this intersection that I like to work in, which is this design and also fine art and the handmade and yeah, so it's just trying to find something like that, just to get some experience that's maybe just more real before I figure out how to include myself in that as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunities here in the Bay Area for that. I hope you find it. I know Mariah, who runs the Blanc estate, there's some great interviews with her and conversations talking about the intersection of the two and getting to influences places that she studied. And she might be a really interesting person to try to talk to.
Okay, that's a good, yeah,
Um,
resource.
Yeah, and I'm trying to imagine like a walking into a room with your table and then the chairs around the table, all like the sound piece. It would be really wonderful to fully immerse myself in your world. And I know it would be like a really satisfying tactile experience.
Yeah, well, that'll be my senior show.
Oh, good. I'm gonna
Yeah.
combine all of the above.
I'm going to combine, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. How many chairs are you making for your senior show then?
I have two right now that are the one that you saw, and then another one that's being made.
That's great. I mean, they look ambitious to make, and
yeah, it's a lot of body work. It's intense. Yeah.
But then that like translates into a very direct, visceral, physical experience. So it's worth it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Without seeing it in person, I can tell it's definitely worth it. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious. So the dinner table will be included. Are there any other projects in wood that you see in your future?
I would love to. I just haven't figured out. I might audit another furniture class at CCA maybe after I graduate, just because that's such a great resource. But yeah, I would love to keep working with wood. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I can tell. And I've always dreamed of wood turning. It seems like you definitely hit a special spot.
Yeah, I mean, it was really scary at first. I mean, there were like lots of tears because I've never done it before. And there's just like stuff flying in your face constantly. And it's just so intense. But yeah, there's definitely this connection point between ceramics and wood. And on the lathe, it felt very connected.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, it's interesting that you're like hand building with ceramics, but then found your way back to the wheel with wood, with the turning in a way. But I definitely could see that you work with wood, coming to wood through a ceramics lens.
Yes, yeah.
It's really fascinating. So I'm excited to see how you move back and forth. And I think sometimes working with two different, like having I'm curious to see how the woodworking influences the ceramics in the future as well, like the going back and forth between. I think it'll be really exciting. Yeah. I look forward to seeing your show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I want to just say quickly to all of our graduating seniors, congratulations, you did it. And I often feel this way. After I'm done teaching, I feel inspired by all of you, and I feel that way right now. You did a great job. So congratulations, Birdie, Cameron, Elliott, Finn, Rami, and Taylor. We are looking forward to seeing your shows in the coming weeks. I want to thank Julia for all of her thoughtful comments and suggestions. We appreciate you and your time. And thanks to all of you who came today to witness and support all of these great artists. We appreciate you as well. And thank you so much and have a really great night.